All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's SugarCRM user group. We're going to be talking about sugar identity and single sign-on using Okta. This is a especially important topic for all of us working remotely and needing to manage users and access to applications in the SugarCRM ecosystem, just to keep our data safe and keep everybody where they're supposed to be. So per the usual, we will be recording this and sharing any crucial information with you via email, follow up the next day. If you have questions throughout, you can always pop those into the chat area, and we're happy to address those as we go along. So let's introduce ourselves here, and we'll get rolling. My name is Janine. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Technology Advisors. And then with us, we have our usual Sugar All-Stars, Megan Sheehan, our Trainer and Business Analyst, and Justin Kuhlthau, our Director of Services. So I'm going to hand it over to Megan and Justin to get us rolling.
All right, great. Thanks, Deneen. So today, as Deneen said, we're going to be talking about Sugar Identity, Single Sign-On, and Okta, which is one of many tools you could use to support single sign-on and other security and user management features like multi-factor authentication. And then, as always, at the end, we'll talk about new releases. So Sugar Identity is a cloud settings console where Sugar administrators can manage users, password requirements, and single sign-on. Sugar Identity is used by SugarCRM cloud instances as long as you're hosted in Sugar's cloud. It can be used with the Sugar plugin for Outlook, with Sugar Connect, with Sugar Mobile, and more to come. Sugar is going to continue to roll this out to their additional products like Sugar Discover and Sugar Market. Most Sugar Cloud instances have already been migrated to Sugar Identity. So chances are, if you're hosted in Sugar Cloud, you probably are already using Sugar Identity. If for whatever reason you're one of the few who have not already migrated to Sugar Identity, you will get a notification prior to that migration occurring, just like any upgrade or other Sugar Cloud notification. You can request to be migrated or wait for it to get scheduled automatically. And when the migration happens, most users will not notice significant changes. The one change that users may notice, especially if they have a saved password, is that the URL is going to change. So they'll still go to the same URL as always when they're logging into Sugar, but it will forward to a new URL that will have the actual login screen. And so if you have your password saved in your browser, depending on what browser you're using, what tool you're using for that, that may not be linked to the new URL. And so some users may need to go through password reset if they don't actually know their Sugar password, but only have it saved in their browser. System admins will see a new Sugar Identity console that will be used for many user management tasks. So Sugar admins will notice some changes with Sugar Identity. And I meant to put it on the slide and forgot. If you have any integrations, make sure you're checking with the integration providers to make sure that they're ready to support Sugar Identity. I know we had some issues with a few customers who use Acton because they were not quite ready for Sugar Identity when Sugar first started migrating customers, and there were a few people who had no integration for a week or two while Acton caught up there. Once you're migrated, if you want to set up single sign-on, you can do that. We're going to talk more about that as we go. So if you are a Sugar admin, when do you use Sugar Identity? So you'll use Sugar Identity to create new users, to edit users, deactivate users, delete users. Creating users in particular, I've got a couple notes here about that. You might do that in a few different ways. So just like previous user management tools, you can manually create a single user. You can do a CSV import, or if you're using SAML, which more about that below, it will load in your users from that. One thing that is pretty different about user management with Sugar Identity versus previous user management tools in Sugar is that Sugar administrators cannot manually set users' passwords with Sugar Identity. So it's more secure password management functionality. Previously, using just Sugar user management, depending on your password settings, you may or may not have been able to set a password for your users manually, but that option will not exist once you're using Sugar Identity. So when you create a new user, you have the option to send an email to that user with a link that they can use to log in right away to set up their password. So if you're creating a new user who will immediately need to use Sugar, you want to go ahead and leave that option enabled. If you're doing something like setting up a whole bunch of new users as you start to prepare Sugar for their use, you may not want them to get that email right away. You don't have to send them that email. You can turn that option off when you create them. And in that case, they would just use the forgot password link when they're ready to access their account for the first time. And that's the same thing that would be true for any users who need to reset their password. So as a Sugar admin, Sugar password resets are no longer your responsibility other than helping someone do it by giving them instructions. You cannot change their password. You cannot reset their password. They have to do it themselves using the forgot password link on the login page. We have seen a few people have issues with this because users are not paying enough attention to the instructions there. Users need to put in their username, not their email address. And it does say that right on the page, but that doesn't mean everyone's reading it very carefully. So just remind your users if they're having trouble logging in, if they're having trouble with forgotten password process, remind them to put in their username, not their email address. A couple of other things that are managed in Sugar Identity Console are the password-related requirements. So similar to the password settings tool that you had previously when you were setting up your users directly in Sugar, the Sugar Identity Console has a password requirements page with very similar options on it for setting up your passwords. And Sugar Identity does also continue to support both LDAP and SAML, SAML. So LDAP and SAML were both previously supported by Sugar. They continue to be supported. These are different methods of doing single sign-on authentication. So if you're using Active Directory or some other LDAP authentication system, or if you're using a SAML tool, you can connect Sugar to those tools and do single sign-on through them. And why is Sugar making this change? What benefits does Sugar Identity bring me? So first of all, Sugar Identity is going to consolidate user management for multiple products, any Sugar product, into one location. So that's going to make ongoing management of user access easier. A couple of examples of how this might work. So first of all, a big benefit of Sugar Identity is Sugar single sign-on support for the Sugar Outlook plugin. Ooh, too many words in that sentence. So in the past, if you used single sign-on with Sugar, you could not use single sign-on with the Sugar Outlook plugin. However, Sugar Identity does have support for the Sugar Outlook plugin. So if you're using single sign-on, it's the same process for users to authenticate, whether they're using Sugar in their web browser or in Sugar Outlook or on their phone. It's consistent. Another example of that is, let's say you're using Sugar and Sugar Connect. You don't have to reset up your users in Sugar Connect because it uses Sugar Identity. Your users are synced directly, as they just have a single user profile, and you set up access rules for who can use Sugar, who can use Sugar Connect by enabling or disabling users in specific products. Another benefit is that Sugar Identity manages the email server for password-related emails rather than using your system email setup in SugarCRM. This is important because it resolves issues where people may have not had email set up yet when they were first deploying Sugar, or maybe something changed with your email settings and you didn't remember to update that in Sugar. So someone is trying to reset their password and they can't get in because of an email deliverability issue. Sugar Identity also has made password setup more secure by never emailing passwords, even temporary passwords. Emails now have a link to click on instead of a password to use. And Sugar Identity makes single sign-on setup much easier, as well as making it more powerful with the ability to connect with cloud identity tools like Okta.
All right, thank you, Megan. As Megan mentioned, the Sugar Identity can integrate with any LDAP or SAML product, including Okta, Microsoft Active Directory, or Google. Today, we're just showing Okta because it happens to be a pretty cool product. It's got a lot of neat features, and it's something I can demo essentially. Microsoft Active Directory, I could have integrated with our Active Directory, but I didn't want to mess with that for a demo. And we don't have a Google business account, but those can do similar things, as we'll see coming up. And then there's a ton of other options other than Okta. I like Okta. I think it's got a good price and a good feature set. So within Okta, or really any or most of these sign-on services, you can have enhanced security. And some of the things I'm going to show today are advanced password management, multi-factor authentication, and Okta has a pretty cool application you can get on your phone that will provide you with the number you have to enter. And we'll see that in a little bit. Or SMS, multi-factor authentication, or security questions. And they have some other options we'll take a look at once we dive into Okta. You can also set up trusted networks. So you could specify that your users can only log in from the United States, an IP address within the United States. Then you're kind of blocking people outside of the United States from even trying to get into your systems. Or as in my demo, I've locked it down to any IP address within Illinois. You could even get down to saying, I only want my users to be able to log into Sugar or whatever from within our office, our specific office IP address. You can have trusted devices, computers or mobile phones, and you can set up new sign-in notification emails so that people get notified when there's a new sign-on, so they can even see if maybe there's a sign-on they don't recognize. Within Okta, you can manage people. So you can manage what people can log into Sugar, for example. And then you can group those people into groups. And within those groups, you can have different security. For example, people within one group may have to do multi-factor authentication every time they want to access Sugar, while others only have to do it, let's say, once a week. And you could also lock down certain people to certain networks or IP addresses, and others, have a more options. Maybe for traveling, people who travel would need more options for logging in. And Okta itself can integrate with over 6,000 applications, allowing you to log into them. And we'll see a couple of examples in just a little bit of that. So without further ado, I will load up kind of SugarIdentity and then Okta and show a few things about how that works. So first I'm going to log out of my instance here, and I'm going to first talk about how do you know if you have SugarIdentity. Well, when you surf to your URL, in our case, techadv.sugarondemand.com, it's going to forward you to this login-us west-number, and that's how you know you're with SugarIdentity. And if you have single sign-on turned on, you're going to get a different screen than your normal login screen. You could click Show Login Form to get your standard login, or you can just click Login to use your single sign-on. And again, if this is integrated with Active Directory, I'm already logged into my computer, so it's going to log me straight into the application without having to enter any credentials. Within here, Sugar's obviously pretty standard, but if I come to my profile and see my users here, and I want to edit this, you'll notice that a number of fields are grayed out. Essentially, these are fields that any application may need access to, things like Sugar Market or Sugar Discover, address information, department information. In order to edit that type of information, I actually have to come up here into my cloud settings, which opens up SugarIdentity for me, taking me back to that wonderful URL. And now I can edit things like the email address, what type of user they are, their status, employment information, again, my address, title, department, phone number, and then even authentication information. What's my username? What's my SAML username to tie it to my single sign-on? coming up here, I can just list my users, create new users, or again, import users. And it's a pretty standard list here. If I just click on any of these users, I can see all of that information and edit it. In addition, Megan mentioned we have set up password with options like password length, what's the minimum and maximum. Does it have to contain an uppercase letter, lowercase letter, number, special character? Do they expire after a certain amount of time or after X logins? Do you want to lock out users after X failed logins? And then they'd have to go through that forgot password process. Within here, you also can set up your LDAP and SAML integration. I do not have LDAP enabled right now. I do have SAML set up. And this is, again, talking to an demo Okta instance I had applied for 30 days. Another kind of cool thing you can do with LDAP and SAML is if you can set up, you can link it to your Active Directory and say, put a certain group of people within a group. And then without even creating the user, if that person surfs to your Sugar instance and logs in, it's automatically going to create a Sugar user for that person based on the fact that they can, you said they can access it within Active Directory or whatever your identity management system is. Before I get into Okta, I want to show how that two-factor can work. So I'm going to open up an incognito window here and surf to techadv.sugarondemand.com. And I can click login here. It's taking me to the Okta login form, and I would have to put in my username and password. It's putting up a picture that I chose as Lee Hogan, so it's another security feature. I put in my password, I could say remember me and sign on. And I've put Lee Hogan into a user group. They have to do two-factor authentication every single time they want to log into Sugar. So now I'm getting that on my phone, just texted to me. And I could say, do not challenge me on this device for the next 15 minutes. That's as long as I gave them. Clicking that, I can now log into Sugar. I just wanted to briefly show when I come to my user profile and try to edit that, I don't have access to SugarIdentity as a regular user, and there's only certain fields I can edit. Okay. I also wanted to show what this looks like on mobile. So if I, let's see. If I were to go on my mobile phone and click on SugarCRM, I put in my server URL, I'm using a secure connection, and I want to use single sign-on. So then I click continue. It brings me to a similar form. I can use single sign-on here, so I click log in. Here I can put in my username and password. I will know via email notification if anyone tries to log in with my username and password, even though it has no access to anything. It's saying, here you need to have SMS authentication, so send the code. It's going to text it to me. I can copy that and paste my code, and then do not challenge me and verify. So that brings me into SugarCRM, and I have to allow access. And then that's bringing me into Sugar Mobile. And depending on my settings, it shouldn't ask me that again for quite some time. So that's how that process looks, the full process on mobile. All right, so let's jump back into Sugar here. So when logging into Okta, you would come to a home screen of My Apps. You can see you can set it up to work with a bunch of different applications. And some of them may not even integrate with SAML or LDAP or single sign-on per se. For example, here I have LinkedIn. I'm not logged in, but Okta has a browser plugin that I can use to sign in. Or I can just click the link to any of these and it'll automatically sign in. For example, if I click LinkedIn, it's automatically signing me in with that browser plugin. And you can do that with any website essentially. So now I'm in my LinkedIn. Okay, now I'd like to quickly take a look at the administration of Okta. So coming into the admin section here, there's a lot of really cool things you can do in here. So I'm just going to highlight some of them. They have a really good onboarding department. If you wanted to try it out, just let us know. You can get a 30-day free trial. But I'm going to start with security here, and we've already looked at some of these. I can take a quick look at a general security. Are notifications enabled, yes or no? What are my Okta password requirements? And you've got a lot of cool information you can set for those. Lockouts, password ages, complexity, all that good stuff. Here you can also set up that multi-factor authentication I had mentioned. I've enabled Okta Verify, which is an app on my phone, SMS, security questions, but there's some other ones. Semantic, Google are some you've probably recognized. Here's also where I set up networks. You can set up a blacklist. This is one provided by Okta that blacklists known malicious IP addresses. I also have a rule here for Illinois only. And finally, you can do things like device trust, where you can trust iOS, Windows, or Mac. They do not have Android support yet. Jumping over to my directory, I can see all of the people who may have access to my system. And I can come in here and click on Lee Hogan, for example, and see, okay, he has access to these 3 applications. I could assign more applications to him. And he can inherit these applications based on what groups he's in. So for example, I have everyone group and a standard users group. And I did want to dive into groups here. So I have standard users and super users. If I look at super users, you have Justin and Megan in that group. And we could see what apps we have. And then let's jump back to here and jump into standard users. Lee Hogan and Deneen, what apps they have, and all that good information. So then I wanted to jump into applications. And let's take a look and edit our SAML TechADV SugarCRM. Within here, I can see that Justin was added individually. We have the group here. Our sign-on settings, our different methods, and rules. If you're in the standard users group, you have to require multi-factor authentication every sign-on. If you're just in the super user role or the default role, you can just allow access. So you can have rules people have to go through when they're accessing any of your different applications. And finally, I just wanted to quickly show adding an application. Again, they have over 6,000 different applications you can talk to, whether it's Active Directory, Outlook, Amazon, all of that good stuff. All right. So if you're at all interested in single sign-on or Okta or any of the other options, let us know. And if there's any questions, feel free to chat those in. Otherwise, I'll bring it back to Megan.
All right, thanks, Justin. I know I certainly learned a lot from that. It's really cool that you have so much flexibility for setting up the different security settings for all of your applications in one easy platform.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, well, unless anyone has any questions about Sugar Identity and single sign-on and Okta, we'll go ahead and wrap up by doing a recap of new releases. There has been quite a bit in this area in the last couple, I guess, months since our last user group. So the big release here is the Sugar 10.0 or Q2 2020 release. This is the annual on-site or on-premise release. So if you're not hosted in Sugar Cloud, this is when you get all of the new features that have come out in the past year. If you are hosted on Sugar Cloud, it's kind of your typical quarterly release. You have your set of new features that you're getting with Sugar Identity or with Sugar 10.0. Some highlights here. First of all, there's an updated record view. And Justin, can you go to the next slide for a minute? I just want to give a quick picture of that. So Sugar has made a couple of different changes here. The biggest change, I think, is the label placement. So in the past versions of Sugar, like where you have your website and then the value of the website, website was on top of the actual value of the website field. And so vertically that used more space on the screen. By putting them side by side, it lets you put more things on the screen without having to scroll as much. They did realize that some people may not like that change, and so there is a user preference setting in user profiles where users can go and turn that feature off or on. However, it is going to default to that new view when you are upgraded to Sugar 10. So just know, maybe prepare your users for that when your Sugar 10 upgrade is scheduled, that they are going to see that user interface or that page layout change a little bit. If they really hate the new page, they can go into their preferences and turn it back to the old view. Sort of associated changes, you can see the member of field, for example, on this screenshot is empty. Just to kind of indicate that, make that really clear and easy to me to pick that change up. They've given it that sort of pill outline. And then I also just, as I've been working in Sugar 10, I've noticed that the colors changed very slightly. So the account green for that AC circle is a little different than the previous version. Some of the colors over in the dashboards are slightly different. So nothing significant there, but just minor tweaks that you'll notice. All right, Justin, can you go back for me, please? Thank you. Besides the updated record view, there were a number of updates for the tile view, which is available in Enterprise, Sell, and Serve. So the tile view is now available for the leads module as well as the opportunity and cases modules. They've added support for custom fields, made it so that your filters will stay or stick when you're switching between the standard list view and the tile view, so you don't have to redo your filters as you change from one view to the other, as well as adding the ability to reorder columns and support for field validation, so it makes sure you're meeting all of your field requirements and things like that as you move things from one stage to another. They've also added the capability to manage and add revenue line items when you're converting a lead. So revenue line items is a feature that's available in Enterprise and Sell, where you can basically have multiple items inside of a single opportunity. That feature has been around for quite some time. I think that dates all the way back to 7.0 if I'm remembering correctly. And one of the things that has always been missing with that is when you converted a lead, you could not create revenue line items. So Sugar has finally had that kind of work its way up to the top of their to-do list and added that function in, which is really nice. Also, the product catalog module has in the past only been available to administrator users. They've kind of expanded access to that so that all users can access the product catalog modules. Like any other module, you can use roles to restrict access if you don't want all of your users to have access to that. They've added a cookie consent message that you'll see the first time you log into Sugar once you're upgraded, just acknowledging the fact that Sugar uses cookies, as well as adding support for the Edge browser. If anyone really loves dashboards, there was previously a limit of you could only have 20 dashboards for a view. They've increased that limit up to 50, so you can really go crazy with dashboards if you really want 50 different dashboards on a homepage or other dashboard view. For administrators, there were some Sugar BPM updates, primarily the ability to set process sequencing. So if you have multiple BPM processes on a single module, you can now set what order they fire in. As well as some other administrator updates, the ability to edit preview layouts. So when you click that preview button, the eyeball button, and you get that record view on the right side of your screen, you can now set the layout for that preview view through Studio. And as well as a new set of APIs for module loader. So that's something that will allow partners and third-party plugins to have more flexible options for installing and uninstalling add-ons. I think that's something that partners are really excited about, and as that becomes more widely used, you'll start to see easier options for things like managing plugins. Sugar 9.03 and 8.06 came out before Sugar 10. Specifically, especially if you're an on-premise customer, this is a security patch. So you may want to look at making sure you've done that security patch if you're not going to immediately update to Sugar 10 on-premise. If you're Sugar Cloud, then that was already included in the Sugar 9.3 release, I believe. So you're already patched if you're in the cloud. And then unfortunately, Sugar 10 has had a couple of pretty significant defects that have been discovered since it was launched. Sugar has already patched the first of those. So Sugar 10.01 came out about a week ago to fix an issue when you had conditional fields in the same row where it was taking up more space than it should on the screen. They got that fixed, and unfortunately almost immediately afterwards they discovered another significant bug with Sugar BPM. So if you're using Sugar BPM, you'll need to wait for the next patch release to come out, which I would assume will be pretty quickly. They have put all on Sugar Cloud upgrades on hold for the moment while they get that defect fixed. If you're a Sugar on-premise customer and you're not using Sugar BPM, then you could go ahead and upgrade to Sugar 10.0.1. Besides Sugar 10 and associated related things, Sugar did announce in March that they're going to extend support for the Sugar 8.0 release. Sugar 8.0 support was supposed to end I want to say it was April 1st or May 1st, somewhere right around now. And with everything going on in the world with COVID-19, they didn't want customers to feel like they had to put time and effort into a Sugar upgrade right now. And so they have extended support for Sugar 8.0 through October 30th. There have also been a couple of updates for Sugar Mobile. So Sugar Mobile 18 added the capability to use the processes dashlet on mobile, which allows people to approve or reject or route Sugar processes. So those user actions that you can use in your Sugar BPM processes can now be done on mobile. And then Sugar 19 added the links that are on the leads view. So if you picture in your head, when you convert a lead in the web application, Sugar adds links to the account, contact, and or opportunity that are created. Those links are now displayed in mobile as well. And then finally, Hint, Sugar Sugar Connector from Marketo, and Customer Journey plugin all had minor updates. So those are all minor bug fixes and support for the latest release.
Thank you, Megan and Justin, and thank you everyone who's with us today. We hope that this was educational for you, and we will be sending out the follow-up information just as a reminder. If any questions come up, of course, you can always respond to that email, and we will direct you to the right person to answer it. The topic and date for our next user group is TBD, but fear not, because we will keep you informed and let you know as soon as we have that information available. So thank you again to Megan and Justin, and to all our attendees today. Hope you're all staying safe out there and you have a lovely afternoon.